Mm.
And then in that same night, I had the vivid vision of Odin, who visited me and who restored my birthright there in my backyard. And I actually embraced forearms with him, and he was a real being in my backyard. Now, my backyard, just FYI, is an 8-foot fence, 8-foot wooden fence, and it's all fenced in. There's no way you're going to get into it. Wonderful.
One, and we go. You know, I like to jump straight into it. Some podcasters, they introduce their guests, they make a little preface. I don't want to miss on this priceless, first seconds, because I feel like it's just natural, right? How two people meet and they get to know each other, and I don't want to miss that.
That's true. That's true.
Yeah. So, nonetheless, I am really privileged and happy to have a shaman on my podcast. Do I pronounce that correctly? A shaman, right?
Good.
Good. May I know how to refer to you? What name you have?
Normally, I go by Mark, but
Right.
I really prefer not being late for dinner.
Okay. Okay. Right. Interesting. So it's seriously the first time for me to talk to somebody like that. And when people hear that you are a shaman, I bet a lot of people tend to misconstrue it and misunderstand it. When people hear a shaman, what do you think usually comes to people's mind, to those who are unaware of it?
I think a lot of people, either they have one of two visions from what they've told me. The first vision is the guru who sits on the mountaintop who has all the answers.
Right.
And that we have to climb all the way up. He has a long beard, and he tells us our future. And then I think the other stereotype that many fit shaman into is another name, essentially another label for a minister, for a pastor, or for one of the main monotheistic practices, one of their practitioners, to where we act a certain way and we do a certain thing. That seems to be, I would say, the major two stereotypes that are associated with a shaman.
Right.
I don't think anyone understands the depth and the breadth of the shamanic history, going all the way back before monotheism, before you see the gods being worshipped in Egypt or Mesopotamia. Go all the way back, further than that, and you'll find where you have certain individuals who are part of a tribe or a village who seem to be more empathic, maybe more sensitive towards the spirits. And those individuals then had a responsibility that they could either embrace or not. And many did, that would then pass on knowledge that we were receiving from the spiritual realm to our physical beings, to our fellow comrades around us, and to teach them the ways and to be one with nature, to be one with the deities, to be one with the spirits. That's really where you see, I think, the growth, maybe even the birth of shamans, referred to as medicine men, referred to as shamans, referred to as druids. I mean, we've had so many titles throughout the years, but ultimately it's, when you talk about a shaman simply has a connection to the spiritual realm that he's willing to share with those around him.
Do you think the fact that shamans have been a present part of many cultures pretty much forever, do you think that somehow complements the fact that, in my opinion, humans have always had this proclamation towards having some sort of a leader, whether that be a shaman or a president, perhaps, right? A priest, for that matter, right?
I think it's very much the same. It's a label that we use that humans use to address something, like saying I have a god.
Yeah.
Some people don't believe that.
Right.
Some people believe that there is spiritual energy in the universe, and that we're all looking at the same thing. We just refer to it differently. I think the label shaman, the label priest, the label pope, all of those, they're just labels, and all
Mm-hmm.
they are is, I think, they're one of those beacons, if you will, that we have a tendency as humans to follow, to look for safe ground, to look
Mm-hmm.
for familiar ground, to look for something that's comfortable, and that's what those members would then serve.
And what do you make out of this rather mainstream term, mentor? Mentor, that is, like, I feel like you being an obvious proponent of, let's put it, the old ways, obviously, because a shaman does not correlate with something much mainstream. Correct me if I'm wrong. What do you make out of modern people's proclamation towards searching for a mentor? How do you look at that?
I think a mentor, again, it's another label. Tell
Right.
me,
So another
one
leader.
would have to define the difference between a friend and a mentor,
Mm.
a parent and a mentor,
Mm-hmm.
a supervisor and a mentor. I think, we apply this label that simply means I'm looking to you for guidance, some type
Mm-hmm.
of guidance, whether that be work guidance,
Mm-hmm.
as my supervisor, or as life guidance as my
Mm-hmm.
parent, maybe a woman guidance because you're my buddy, my peer at the
Mm-hmm.
bar, or wherever we are. Um, all of these things are simply, they're labels,
Mm-hmm.
that replace another label that we've come up with throughout antiquity. And again, it's a intrinsic demand for the human mind to find common, or comfort, to be safe, to be secure, to be comfort, and so these labels help us to provide that.
And on contrary, do you think you believe that it is possible and perhaps even necessarily desirable for a man to lead a life not tending to connect to any sort of example, any paragon, any role model, mentor, guru? Do you think that would be a desirable life, or is it still better to look up to somebody?
Well, I think, I think a lot of people fool themselves and think they're not spiritual.
Hmm.
And I find it quite often where I am interacting with a multitude of individuals, particularly the alpha type veterans whom I work with quite frequently. And they always come to me and they say, "Oh, I'm not religious. I'm not spiritual.
Hmm.
I'm
Hmm.
none of that." But no, no. You can tell
Everybody
yourself
is.
that all you desire, but
Right.
you are a spiritual being at your core. You cannot escape this. You're connected to the spiritual realm like the splitting of an atom, where we have protons, neurons, and electrons. The the physical and the spiritual realm exist at the same space at the same time.
Hmm.
So for you to say that, "Oh, I'm not this or I'm not that," is the only person, in my opinion, you're fooling is yourself, because
Right. So,
we
yeah,
need
so
it.
you're saying that spirituality is fundamentally present, inherently present in everybody. So why then do you think some people tend to be a bit more oblivious towards that? Is that a conscious choice of theirs?
I think, I don't know a conscious choice. I do believe there is some conscious choices
Yeah,
being made to
yeah.
try to steer clear of it, or steering clear what they recognize. I should,
Hmm.
maybe that's a better way to phrase that. Um, but I think in the big picture of things, I think people are in a lion's share, and there are certainly people contrary to this, but the lion's share of people, I think, are oblivious to it. They don't, they've been programmed by society, by their community,
Hmm.
by their, parents, by others around them. Oh, we don't have time for that. We don't have time for that. We're going to go be successful. We're going to go do this. We're
Hmm.
going to go do that. And so they kind of turn a blind eye to it, only to find themselves many years maybe later
Hmm.
struggling with mental health issues or physical health issues,
Yeah,
and they don't
devastating.
understand why. And it's this mystery. Well, why? Why are we
Yeah, like
doing this?
seems like a puzzle is just gone from the general picture, and a lot of people keep wondering why that is. Yeah, and on surface everything might seemingly look fine, right? But then still some sort of element is gone. Yeah, my favorite guitar player, John Frusciante of Red Hot Chili Peppers, has famously said that everybody has got a hole in their heart size of a god, and everybody feels that hole differently. So
That's
we
right.
all have this hole of a size of a god, and that's a beautiful quote I find. So, do you guide spiritually? And if yes, who and how? I'd be curious to know.
I do a lot, and yes, to answer the question flat out, I do a lot of spiritual guidance. Um, I work a lot with many different people because I have a commonality amongst them all. When we talk about indigenous beliefs, when we talk about Celtic beliefs, we talk about those individuals who want to know more about being maybe Norse. Um, certainly, so I work with a lot of different people. I also work with people who swear to me that they are uh, without religion, without spirituality,
Mm,
and they've kind of dissected away, only to find out that now, as they have mental health issues, now they need help in reconnecting that.
mm,
So I think, when we talk about spiritual guidance and do I offer it? Yes, absolutely. I'm 24/7.
mhm,
I'm in prayer or meditation, or
mhm,
I'm working with someone or something. And so I am pretty much constantly connected at some point.
mhm,
I think just helping people to understand that whether they decide to, buy the t-shirt, so to speak, and
mhm,
proclaim loudly that they are this or they are that, they are spiritual beings at their core. And they need to
mhm,
recognize that for a continued mental health and a continued physical health.
mhm. So let's
And
say
so,
somebody was to refer to you, now obviously without unfurling much information, for obvious reasons, but if somebody was to refer to you and seek to your guidance, what would your protocol be, depending on what, and how would you practically go about, let's say, exposing a person, a client of yours, to a bit more of a spiritual realm? How would you practically go about that?
we produce a weekly podcast. I produce a lot of different multimedia stuff for my company. And I invite people to look at that and to,
Mm,
certainly, I do periodically, I do public speaking
mhm,
events where we draw in hundreds of people and we talk about all kinds of things. My goal is to not, I don't tell you, hey, you have to do this, you have to do that, you have to do this. I simply suggest that one meditates to find one's own way, because
mm,
everyone's path is different. My path worked for me. My
mhm,
path brought me to where I am, but my path won't work for anyone else.
mhm,
It just So everyone has their own path, and the only one who can find that path is you.
mhm,
Is the individual, and so I can simply provide them with, hey, have you thought about this? Have you
mhm,
meditated about this? Have you thought long and hard about this and this other thing? But the path, the journey that you have to go on to acquire whatever form of spirituality fits you,
mhm,
you have to go on that journey.
mhm,
I can just lead the way and tell you, hey, the way you're going to do that is you're going to have to know yourself.
mhm,
You're going to
mhm.
have to know where you're starting.
Do you think there could be a wrong way of being spiritual?
Absolutely not. There is no wrong way to be a
Mm,
spiritual.
mm,
You can be Adolf Hitler and still be spiritual.
mhm,
You're just interpreting the energy incorrectly that you're being given. And
mhm,
so, um, the idea is there is no real wrong way to be spiritual. There's no wrong way to find what gives you peace of mind and comfort of heart. It's, there's no wrong way. So I don't think that there's, in what I've been taught and what I've learned, there really is no way to find that path. We will all spend, as an example, I started my spiritual journey as in the metaphysical. I was into the stones and whale song and the natural world. That evolved after I got married. It evolved to Christianity, where I was ordained as a minister in Christianity. Um, Again, still finding holes. I went searching. I studied the practice of Islam, Judaism, Buddhism, Hinduism. Uh, I spent my time in all of those searching for the answers that ultimately would come to me in my culture. As I discovered
Mhm.
more about my culture, I discovered, quite honestly, I'm Norse.
Mhm.
I'm a Dane from northern Germany and southern Denmark. And as I discovered that, holes that I had in my belief system, in my heart, and my mind, began to fill in, and
Mhm.
I began to feel whole again. And so I speak now not from a position of to be Norse is to be right, to be Christian is wrong, or Islam is wrong. No one's wrong.
Mhm.
We're all right. We just see
Mhm.
things from a different perspective. We're looking at the same infinite being. We're just seeing that infinite being from a different perspective. We're standing, instead of looking straight at this individual, we're turned to the left or turned to the right, and we're seeing it from a different perspective. So there is no wrong way. It's all just a matter of encompassing all of what spirituality is. So it's
You
easier that way.
mentioned you mentioned tapping into Islam. How would you compare Islam to Christianity in terms of, let's say, which one is a bit more forgiven? Because I've been hearing this opinion. Now I've been baptized unbeknownst to me, like a lot of children. Like I think majority of children in my country have been, and so I've been thinking, but I do not consider myself particularly religious. Perhaps it's going to change, and I feel like, it's not like I do not consider myself non-believer as well. So currently, I'm in some kind of a middle position. I'm greatly aware of the fact that it's arrogant of me. And as Christopher Hitchens, uh, a British journalist who passed away many years ago, said, sooner or later you're going to have to make a decision whether you're sitting on a chair or on a toilet. And I do know that sooner or later I'm going to have to make a decision. But I've been hearing a lot of opinions that Islam seems to be a bit more, well, righteous in a positive way, a bit more restricting and unforgiving. And the image of the Lord, so to speak, seems to be a bit more almost rude, compared to the Christian God, and that the Christianity seems to be on a decline because of, well, allowing too many things into itself. As recently as today, I've seen not to be misogynistic by no means or sexist, but today I've bumped into a video of a woman priest, and that just simply plainly surprised me. I don't think I've ever seen or heard something like that. And again, nothing against that, but it was just interesting to listen. And they touched upon the topics of like people of LGBTQ, whatever, being ordained, and it just tells me, man, no way something like that could be even happening in Islam. And I'm not saying that it's good or bad. It's just, just mere observation of the fact. So which religion do you think, I don't want to say optimal, but how do you compare those two?
Well, I really don't.
Yeah.
Because, and I want to make sure that I draw attention to the fact that you're talking about two different pieces,
Hmm.
right? So you have within a religion, and we'll use Christianity as our example, but
Hmm.
they're all the same way. Is that you have a sliver of that understanding. That's the spiritual side. That's actual God talking to you, you doing something with it, angels supporting you. Those types of things are, finding peace and joy, and those things, that's the spiritual side of those religions. But then you
Hmm.
have another side of that called the practice.
Hmm.
And the practice, the practice has evolved over the 2 millennia that monotheism has been in place. When you talk about, when I say you need to do this, you need to believe this, you need to act this way, I have left spirituality and I have entered into the practice part of this. And so the practice part, in my opinion, is a waste. It's wasted energy. It was designed to control masses in prehistory. So, you know, as Christianity spread, particularly across Europe and into Scandinavia, it was, you know, conform or die. You were either Christian or you died. Those were your choices. So a lot of people became Christians. That's practice. That's not spiritual. To say, hey, I believe in you know, a single entity, a single deity. That single deity has a sun, and that sun has X energies that he's passing to the earth, and he moves within me. Great. That is spirituality. That is your perspective of spirituality, and it's wonderful. It's perfect. It's the way life is meant to be. But when you tell me that I have to believe a certain way or I have to act a certain way, now you've left that. You've left spirituality behind, and you've moved into this practice. And this is where witches were burned on the stake, heretics were burned or killed or whatever. You find hundreds of thousands of indigenous Americans who were murdered because they didn't subscribe to this belief. That's practice. And that, unfortunately, in today's monotheism, those two are bundled together. And I think, to your point about people leaving Christianity, I don't believe people leaving Christianity as a whole. I believe what they're doing is they're leaving the practice of spirituality, or they're leaving the practice of the religion. And many of them, including many of their leaders that I've spoke to over the months and over the years that I've been doing what I do, is they still believe in Christ. They still believe in a single God. They still believe in the Holy Spirit. They still believe in the spiritual parts of those religions. They're just no longer subscribing to the practices, the public displays, all the things. And
so do you think it really even counts if you kind of believe, but your actions do not ensue? Shouldn't Christianity be active in terms of actions? Isn't it what it's supposed to be? No, just in your heart.
No, I think, you know, you have a personal relationship with your interpretation of what a deity is. You have your own personal relationship with that deity, with the spirits around you, even with other physical beings who have spiritual cores. You have relationships with them through your aura. How you act in society, how you behave when you're out in the community, is solely based on your desire to be accepted by that community. Has nothing to do with your spirituality, what you believe, what you feel, when you close your eyes at night and you're hoping for a new day, what is that entity that we communicate with? And that entity, as long as our relationship is good with that entity, I matter not what people in my community say. Oh, you're this or you're that, or you're doing this or whatever. I don't care. That's not, you know, as long as I follow the rules of my community, my society. Obviously, I don't go around killing people left and right. And I, you know, and I see all people as equal, irrelevant of any, you know, deformity, a sex, a religion, of color, of anything. There is no difference. They're all spiritual entities at their core, and they mean well, and they're trying to get ahead in their life as well. So they're just trying to learn, just like I am, no different. And so when we begin to start shifting our view of the world, I think, and those people who are now coming away from Christianity as a religion, going down to Christianity as a spirituality, I think we're seeing that. I think we're seeing where more people are getting that idea, where it's okay for me to read the Bible and to believe the words that are written there. But do I have to go out and stand on the street corner with, some picket sign and say, "Thou shalt do this and this, blah blah blah"? No, that's not my responsibility. My responsibility is to grow my spirituality. My, and I offer advice all day long. I can tell you, hey, this worked for me. Does it work for you? I don't know. I'm just saying, here's this thing. I'm not saying you have to believe what I believe. I'm saying this is what I believe. This is what creates peace in my heart and makes sense into my mind. And it fits into my culture, into my heritage, into my history. I'm comfortable. And so I think we need to get, and I think we're seeing that. I think, to your point about people moving away from Christianity, I don't think they're moving away from Christianity. I think they're moving away from the Christianity practice, that enforcement mechanism that's been in place since the very beginning.
Do you believe in life after death? Pardon my
I do.
directness.
I don't believe in no. Maybe let me restate that. I do believe your spiritual entity is eternal. Your spiritual core, the person you are at your very minimal, is an eternal being. And you are experiencing a physical manifestation of life. You're going through this life. You are learning emotions. You are learning how to control those emotions. You are learning how things look from other people's eyes. You are learning empathy. You're learning empathy. So at one point, when you no longer have a physical body and you are a spiritual entity as a whole, you are able to provide empathy for your descendants that you may provide them with guidance. That's what you do. Can you, after you become a spiritual entity, after a physical life, can you decide, hey, I just didn't learn that well enough. I want to do it again. Absolutely. Absolutely. You can, get into that. There's an energy core, and you simply submit energy, and you're bonded with the next physical being that is conceived. You then re-enter life, whether you enter life as a human being, whether you enter your life as a blade of grass or a tree or an animal, solely up to us, depending on what we need to learn.
Do you think there will be an option for us to decide once the physical?
It is.
Yeah.
There's always a choice, my friend. Yeah. Always a choice. Everything about our existence, from the time our energy was put together in such a way that it created a consciousness, from that point until eternity, we always have a choice. We can choose to be, happy and content and just, okay, we did it, it's done, move on. Or, no, I want to go on that ride again. That was fun. I had a great time. I'm going to do it again and see if I have a great time with this one too. It's up to us.
That's beautiful. That's interesting, because I think that correlates a little bit to what I've heard. It's a bit of a far-fetched theory, if even a theory. I think a theory is rather of a statement, that the fact, and that was, I don't know, I must have heard it in a film or something, Harry Potter probably, that's where I heard that the reason why we have ghosts is because those are the souls, the entities that preferred to stay. They just made a choice not to go to the other side, and they made a choice to hover around. Now, I don't know what you make out of that necessarily, but
well, yeah, there are spiritual entities around us. They're around us every day. They were referred to as, in my culture, they were referred to as the Lenvedi, in the Vadao or Voodoo spectrum. They're referred to as the spirits of the land. Many different cultures refer to them as spirits, and essentially they're just beings that do not have physical form, that are here to advise. They're here to advise. They're here to enlighten. Harm. Yeah.
No harm,
I'm sorry?
right? It can't be, no harm can't be like they cannot do us no harm. You think those entities,
Correct.
contrary to what is portrayed in books and films
Cor-
often, right?
right. Yes, there is no harm because they're not in physical form. First and foremost, these are spirit, so they're just bundles of energy. So it would be like static electricity
Right.
is a prime example of spiritual energy, or very similar to spiritual energy, where we're just walking around the house and we'll socks and we touch our partner, and it's an eye-opening experience for both of us.
Right.
It's very much the same way with spiritual energy. Is that I'm able to go out in the front yard and sit in my yard in my grass and feel Yord beneath my feet, beneath my bum, and I can feel her energy just being pulled into my being, into
Mhm.
myself. And so I then take that and then I try to give it out. I try to give it to
Yeah.
everybody I find, and with either love
Okay.
or words that hopefully informs and educates.
That's interesting. Yeah, now I do recall as one self-proclaimed comedian claimed in a talk of a spirit and how people tend to be afraid of spirits and ghosts and paranormal activities, thanks very much to horror films. And he says, "I'm like, yeah, well, what's a ghost gonna do to me? Possess my grandma? Good luck with that, right?" So that's interesting. How does your typical day in life look like?
Well, it all depends. There's a lot, depending on what day of the week it is, really. Today, I happen to be just doing my garage, so it's kind of a
Mm,
low day for me. Um, but normal during the week, I work with veterans and I work with people who have experienced heavy psychological trauma, help
mhm,
them to kind of find their way back to kind of some semblance of normal for them, help them to understand the path forward and build mechanisms at which to cope with this overall grief or this drama or trauma, I should say, to their
mhm,
psychology and help them get back to life. Primarily, I work with a lot of veterans returning from combat, returning from overseas deployment. So that's kind of most of my week.
mhm,
And sometimes I get a phone call from. There are several villages here in Alaska and certainly in Canada that I will go and visit, and we'll kind of hang out and talk,
mhm,
particularly if their religious leader, their spiritual guide is
mhm,
under the weather, or if he's traveling or whatnot. I'll kind of fill in for him, and we'll go and we'll talk about some wonderful spirituality and how to bring it and how to get balance and help those folks as well. So I could be in
mhm,
almost any village here in Alaska and
mhm.
certainly some in Canada.
How's life
Um,
like in Alaska, I wonder?
it's just like everywhere else, really,
Mm,
except we don't have, a lot of the villages I visit don't have running water. So
mm,
you wind up kind of learning to do the camping thing in a
mm,
house. So it's fun.
mm,
I love it.
mm,
I love the people. I love the things. I love the just being there.
mm,
Wonderful people who really understand the land and understand the spirits of the land. They really understand that, and so
mm.
it's always nice to be there. Kind of
That
recharges
seems
the
to be quite
batteries.
often the thing about villagers, folks of a village, and that's one very distinct trait that stands out in those people compared to city folks. I've always said to everybody, no way can I ever live in a city. Something that doesn't feel right, something's just ain't right in the city to me. My town is like maybe 300 people on a good day. Usually it's probably 100, on a
Nice.
crowded day. Yeah, and it's nice. So, what about ceremonies and rituals?
I do
I'd
do
like to know more
ceremonies and
about that.
rituals from time to time. There is a small group of Celts here in Alaska, and we do perform the normal the blots that happen periodically. We do those. I do wedding ceremonies.
Okay.
I do those a lot. I do birth ceremonies.
Okay.
I visit shut-ins quite often, so quite a bit. I mean, I'm kind of
Right.
here, there, and everywhere sometimes.
Right. That's interesting. So, those ceremonies and rituals, they still seem to be intertwined in a general holiday or an important event, whether that's a birth, right, or a wedding or something like that. Do you do
Agreed.
something a bit more like let's say, shamanism oriented, something that would rather seem mysterious to people outside the topic, because I imagine, again, I'm being maybe biased or obviously misunderstanding this, but I imagine a shaman in the middle of a dark forest with drums, perhaps, walking in circle, kind of crooning some tone, right? And
Yeah,
almost being
it's
in a
horrible
trance.
when I start singing. No one
Oh,
lets me sing. I'm able to use the drums pretty well, but no singing.
yeah.
They absolutely forbid me
Okay.
from singing. And I do those. I
Yeah.
do, with Celtic ceremonies and rituals, we do quite a bit of those. Quite a bit, maybe. We do them often enough. In addition, I'm always doing my own meditation, my own
Yeah.
rituals. So those involve, being in nature and being alone.
Mm.
And so I do a lot of that as well. And
Do you
I
smoke a
mean,
pipe, perchance?
I'm sorry,
Do you smoke a pipe, perchance?
I do not.
Yeah, you don't. Yeah, it doesn't
I do not.
complement the lifestyle.
I do not. Yeah,
Mm.
I have smoked a pipe with the peace pipes. I've smoked several of those, but
Yeah,
I'm not a smoker. I
yeah,
just
okay.
oh man, it
Okay.
just tears me up.
Yeah. That ain't healthy, no way. Everybody who says that, it's, well, that might be less perhaps harmful than some other vices of humans, but still
I
not
agree.
entirely. Altered states of consciousness. Do you practice those? What
I do.
sort, and how do you achieve them, if you don't mind?
There are a bunch of different ways. When I first started my shamanistic journey, um, I had to learn how to do trances, and one of the ways
Uh,
that I found that I could quickly get into a trance was with mead and whiskey,
okay.
um, and that produced the right frame of mind that got the energy. Now I don't use any of that
Okay.
to achieve this altered state. I can enter into and out of trances actually very fluidly.
Yeah.
Now, I mean, I've been doing it for 20 years now, so I don't need those altering medicines
Uh,
and fluids to get me there now. I can do it without.
yeah.
I've done. Matter of fact, we were just counting them, and I've had something like 190 full trance sessions
Mm.
where literally my altered state. When I came out of the altered state, I had drawings, and here I will show you. This is a book that we are currently in the process of doing. This one
Mm.
partially done. Um,
Hmm.
Let me see. I'm trying to find a page here. Oh, here we are. So when we talk about, and I don't know if your
Mm.
viewers could
Hmm.
see that,
Hmm. Yeah, yeah.
but as you know, it's written in all runes, but that's
Nice.
okay. But
Wow.
what it's essentially doing, let me see if I can find my finger here. There we go. But it's defining
Uh-huh.
a process. So it's giving me a
Okay.
visualization of a process. And then, of
Uh-huh.
course, the rune simply explains that process, whatever it is. And
Yeah.
so I'll literally come out of trances with these pre-written. These are already written by spiritual entities with whom I have only had one or two trances with. Um, some of them come back and I get 3 or 4 sessions with.
Yeah.
Others are just one session and they had something really important to say. And so we wrote it down,
So
or they
you
wrote it
are
down.
now able to enter the state pretty much on your own, on a wish, on a demand, right? And how
Yep.
long does one last?
Anywhere from about 20 minutes to 45 minutes, depending on what's being
Okay.
said.
And how
Um,
aware are you of what's going on outside?
Not at all.
Being not at all.
Not at
And
all.
how does it? Do you have visuals, audible effects, or something like that? How does it subjectively feel to you?
Um, it actually I do have After Effects where I have visions of what was
Yeah.
said and what was shown, which is why when I come back and I can kind of look at the runes, I read the runes, read what was said, I can kind of understand what between the visions in my head and what I was
Mm.
explained and what's on the page. I kind of know, okay, this is what their intent was, this is what they meant to say, and this is
And by
essentially
them, you
how it.
mean entities, right?
Correct.
Yeah. Okay. Wow, that's interesting. Do you enter some kind of communication? You obviously do on some level, right?
I do.
And when you said that sometimes they tend to remain, meaning in like in this dimension, or they return with you back when you come back to here, right? Some of them tend to
They do not.
prolong.
I mean, typically they'll fade away as I come out of the trance, and they simply go back to the. But I know that if I go, say 2 hours later, we decide to do
Mhm.
another trance for whatever reason, there's a potential that they could come right back and kind of finish
Uh-huh.
what they wanted to write. If it was more
Okay.
than what got written the first time. Um, so I see quite frequently my 53rd great grandfather is his name was Jens. He was born in Bjerrebysund, Denmark, in the year 731. He communicates quite frequently and helps me to understand what all the other entities are saying. So, on
Mhm.
top of trances, I can also have channeling events where Jens comes to me and he says, well, in our time and age, because when these people are communicating, they're communicating in their frame of reference. So
Mhm.
it's their time. And so when we say, "Oh, you need to get up in the morning and cut wood," well, you don't need to do that anymore because
Mhm.
we have heating. And it's kind of a
Mhm.
unique thing. And so he helps me to kind of cross those bridges between the words and
Okay.
the intent of antiquity and today.
Interesting. Interesting.
Yes,
Is that does it feel pleasant to you? Do you have
it's
some kind
always
of
pleasant.
hangover? Yeah, being inside that condition.
Yes,
Uh,
I've
Interesting.
never had a bad experience.
Wow. Well, pretty predictable. I bet everybody who's been listening to my show can absolutely get my next question is about mushrooms, psychedelics. How does that intertwine with your practice?
I do not use them. I do not forbid them. I have
Yeah.
a few friends who use them. Again, it's to alter their state of minds. It's to get them into that altered state. If
Yeah.
they can't do it naturally, I just do it naturally now, so I don't need them. I have never. That's not true. I did use peyote when I was in Arizona many, 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 many years ago.
Mm.
Peyote, of course, being another one of the psychedelics
Mhm.
used to reach the to reach that state. And again, I've never had a bad experience, so
Mhm.
it is what it is.
Interesting. Right. Yeah. What do you make out of those? I guess they also can be called a shaman. Those people who guide those tourists who wish to experience ayahuasca trips. Do you think it is sometimes necessary for certain individuals to have their mind enhanced by certain substances, or would you still prefer to go natural and tap into similar condition all on your own?
As I've learned over the decades, natural is better.
Yeah.
However, we are programmed, we, as in the human race, is programmed by 2,000 years
Right.
of thou shalt nots.
Mm.
And so, for many, making that leap over those thou shalt nots
Hmm.
into the altered state where
Hmm. Hmm.
spirituality exists,
Hmm.
sometimes that's increasingly challenging.
Hmm.
And
Hmm.
therefore there is a substance, the mushrooms, certainly the peyote is another one. There's a couple that can help those people who are stuck in their thou
Hmm.
shalt nots get to that altered state where
Hmm. Hmm.
they can then experience true spirituality. Once they do it several times,
Hmm.
it's going to become more and more easy for them to then get to that state of mind without the mushrooms and
Hmm.
the
Hmm.
peyote. So
Additives.
it becomes,
Right.
so you're training your brain. But again, those thou shalt nots can be a fairly substantial obstacle.
Right. And do you believe that it's absolutely necessary for everybody to cross that threshold to go against that thou shalt not? Or do you think some people just better off without challenging themselves from that
I think
perspective?
everyone needs to understand the influence that what's on the other side gives us. They need to understand how it affects our mental health every day. It affects your base knowledge. So understanding how that comes to be and why that is, I think is paramount. Does everybody think it's paramount? Probably not. And that's okay. They will experience their spiritual touch the way it's meant to happen. Some people rely on their dream states. Dream states are another
Which is
cross between the
insane.
veil. So as we step into our dream state, we're crossing the veil between the physical and the spiritual realms, and we're able to see some of that spirituality in its raw form. And maybe that's enough. Maybe they're good there.
Speaking of dreams, what do you make out of Carlos Castaneda's work?
I'm not familiar with his particular work. But I can tell you there's been so much studies about dreams and helping us to understand why dreams are and how they work. Dreams literally, and I think scientifically we've actually got to a place where we've proved it, is where the brain physically is shut down. It has no physical sensory input. And so you literally are getting either memories of the day, something happened eventful during your day, that's going to be recalled, or you're going to get a bunch of images of things you've never seen before, things that just don't make sense, things that you can't comprehend, and that's spiritual energy entering into your dream state. That's you seeing spirituality. And so it is what it is. It's provides for you. These visions also provide energy for the body to use to heal itself, to rejuvenate, to kind of heal all those damaged cells and to kind of get us back up on our feet again. And so it is what it is. So, but I think science is proving it more and more every day. Every scientific study about a form of spirituality is beginning to prove more and more that, yeah, it's a real thing. Everything about the spiritual energy and how it's transferred to you, how you use it, and how you discard it, all of those processes now are just on the cusp of really being explored to what I would anticipate to be the final understanding.
How does one become acquainted with the skill of deciphering dreams? Should one go with a dream journal, read something, or just rather rely solely on your own inner senses and intuition? Because, there are all kinds of people who go, dreaminterpreters.com, and that kind of
Oh
stuff.
yeah.
And, yeah.
Oh yeah. That's big business.
Yeah.
But I think there's two forms and two parts of the answer. Is the first thing, if you're like me, you forgot by the time you wake up.
Oh,
So
hell yeah.
a dream
Immediately.
journal
Yeah.
is really paramount if you can write them down right away, because then by breakfast I've forgot everything that went on overnight. So writing them down is a good point. But I think ultimately the answers all reside in you. They're intrinsic. So your
So you just gotta
intuition
look
is
deeper
going to tell
inside.
you. Yeah. So it's going to give you what you need to know from that dream. So it's going to pre-program things in your life that it's going to kind of set the stage for events happening in your life based on what it taught you in the dream. And so you will get to this experience, whatever it is, and you'll go, man, I've seen this before. Oh, deja vu. Well,
Interesting.
yes, it
So
is
your
deja vu.
dreams shape reality, right?
I'm sorry?
Your shape. I might be using a wrong microphone. I will be at most disappointed at
No,
after the
so
record.
far I can hear you, so you're
Yeah,
good
well,
so far.
it's just it would be PT if by the end of the record I understand I didn't plug the right microphone. That's going to be a shame. So you said that dreams shape reality, right.
Dreams have the potential of laying the groundwork for your future realities. Yes.
Right. Okay.
But
Interesting.
ultimately they're not technically making the realities. They're
Hmm.
they're telling you what to make in your reality. You make your own reality.
I
You
think
form
what
this
matters
in
the
front of you.
most, yeah, I feel like what matters the most when it comes to dream interpreting is not what you exactly accurately see, but how you feel during these scenarios
That's
and
true.
pictures. I think the inner feeling, that's what matters the most, I believe. And you have to ask yourself what that feeling tells you, whether you miss that feeling or it's something that's lacking in your life currently, or
That's
maybe
true.
something that bothers you and needs fixing. Yeah, nice. And to tend to that aspect, you absolutely must write it down. But on the other side, it's like, they say that when a dream tends to escape rather quickly, that speaks of a healthy psychological state. I don't know if that's been proven, but I probably would not want to remember my dreams for weeks on end. I don't think that would be useful.
It could provide
Uh,
guidance. It could provide us with the balance.
uh,
It could fill holes that we may have in our normal existence. So there's pieces that can be filled in, much like a walk in the woods. It does the same thing.
yeah.
I mean, you can get as rested walking in the woods as you can a night of sleep. So all it
Mm,
is a matter of passing energy into your body, and it happens when you're
mm,
asleep the most often.
mm. Have you ever practiced lucid dreams?
I have not. I've had some in the
Mm,
very far past, and I've probably I've probably slept more than 5 hours at a time.
uh,
Uh, I would say once in the last 40 years.
mm,
So I don't have very long dreams. They're very
mm,
poignant. They're to the point.
mm,
And the ones I need to make note of, I make note of. The ones I don't, I don't.
mm,
I know that the spirits will guide me and give me the direction I need when it comes time to
mm, mm,
utilize what I've
mm,
supposed to have learned in dreams. So I'm usually pretty easy
mm.
about them.
Well, on a closing note, let me ask you if you've ever interacted with something paranormal, mysterious that you still can't explain, maybe some particularly interesting occurrence in your practice, or maybe outside of that, something that you you know, couldn't quite comprehend in your mind. Was there anything like that?
Actually, I'm going to use your question to plug in a book as well as my
Okay,
book.
sure, please.
My book, The Turn to Final, is out. You can get it at Amazon, Barnes and Noble, or our webpage. Um, the book talks about the night I really embraced being Ulfhednar. The
Mm,
Ulfhednar, a little history is that they were more or less equal in the Norse legends to the Berserkers. So they were kind of
mm,
even with the Berserkers. The difference with the Ulfhednar was that we had a relationship with the Lenvedi, the spirits of the land. So in many times when
mm.
Ulfhednar went to battle, the trees would rise up and crush the enemies. Boulders would roll off hills
Okay.
and crush the enemies. Why? Because the Lenvedi were helping the Ulfhednar. And so the Ulfhednar
Damn,
now
all right.
only had to fight half the people. So that's kind of how that
Uh-huh.
relationship developed. Ulfhednar came into my family line 53 generations ago in the year 730. I have been blessed with that birthright. And when I decided that night, I decided to embrace the Ulfhednar was in my backyard. And
Mhm.
it's in the book where um, it was a regular night. I believe it was my birthday, and one of my dogs got. I thought she got caught on something in the backyard, buried in snow. We had about 4 feet of snow,
Yeah.
11 of which was powder. And so
Mhm.
I decided to dash out. This is just before going to bed at night, and unhook her. Well, she wasn't hooked up. Come to find out.
Mhm.
But as equally disturbing to me at the time was that I was standing in 11 inches of powders of snow, bare feet, and no pants no long pants on. I had shorts on,
Mm.
and yet I
Mm.
wasn't cold.
Mm.
And then in that same night, I had the vivid vision of Odin, who
Mm.
visited me and who
Mm.
restored my birthright there in my backyard. And I actually embraced forearms with him, and he was a real being in my backyard.
Mm.
Now, my backyard, just FYI, is an 8-foot fence, 8-foot wooden fence,
Mm-hmm.
and it's all fenced in. There's no way you're going to get into it easily.
Mm.
And really, because he was about a foot
So you
taller than
could
I
see
am,
him, right, as vividly and clearly as you
I
would
could
see
see him
otherwise, right?
just as clear as I see you. Absolutely.
Wow.
But more dangerously, I could touch him. I actually embraced his
Wow.
arm and held his arm to
Okay.
where we swore an oath. We swore the oath of the Ulfhednar.
Mm.
And when we did, of course, part of swearing an oath to the Norse was that you had to give blood. I mean, it's kind of like
Mm.
being in a community. You have to give a little blood. And so I cut my arm
Mm.
with a knife I always keep in my waistband. And I cut my arm, and he cut his with his axe. And our bloods pooled between our arms. I remember very distinctly feeling the warmth of the blood, and I still have the scar.
Oh, wow.
So
Shit. Right on your hand?
it's on my arm. It's about middle of my arm here. So if you look at my forearm, it's
Okay.
right there.
Okay.
Um, and
Okay.
so
Okay.
it the reality was that being Odin was in my yard, was
Yeah.
visiting with me, and we touched. And
Was
when
he standing on the snow?
he was standing in snow, he was buried
Yeah.
in, just like me. I mean, you could tell he had some weight to
Right.
him. So he was sunk in the snow just
Mm.
like I was. And when he turned to leave, I saw and I distinctly remember kind of looking down and going, okay, I see the footprints.
Mm.
I see the footprints. And as he turned and he walked away and kind of faded off into the snow, because it was snowing at the time, faded away.
Mm-hmm.
When you look down, I saw the footprints kind of go away. And so I was like, okay, so I'm done. And I went in the house and we went to bed. And I came out the next day. I don't remember what I was doing, but I could see my footprints were covered with snow, right? So you just have that
Okay.
unevenness in the snow, right? His were
Right.
gone. His were totally gone. It was like they were never there. But I specifically remember
Wow.
seeing his footprints in the snow. And again, I mean, it was one of those moments where I knew beyond a shadow of a doubt that this is what I'm supposed to do. And so since that day till now, I've been 24/7 trying to help people understand their spiritual freedom
Yeah, that's
to
impressive.
establish
Holy
mental
shit.
health.
Okay. Interesting.
But it's
We
in
are
that
not
book.
talking
So if
about any.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and so if people purchase the book, it's only $15.99. It gives a real good explanation of spirituality from a quantum physics perspective. Breaks it down
Right.
to a
Right.
quantum to a what I would call to where someone who didn't know spirituality understood how spirituality worked.
Right.
And
And I
so
think
to
that's necessary, right? That's what people are
see.
craving.
I think that's what people are looking for, and I think that's what people need to reestablish better mental health.
Hmm. Yeah, that's beautiful. That's interesting. How tall was Odin?
He was about a foot and a half taller. I came up to just about my top of my head. I'm 6'1", and I came up. My
Uh-huh.
top of my head came right to his nose. So he was probably another
Uh-huh.
half, maybe foot taller than me.
Wow. That's wild. Okay. And we are not talking about you being in some sort of a state of sleepy, being sleepy, right? Waking up, falling asleep. Because, I've noticed that a lot of interesting things seem to occur there is this magical gap with this juxtaposition between waking up, barely opening your eyes, or maybe even not managing to open your eyes, but being just a modicum conscious. And then in that particular condition, when you're half conscious, half asleep, all kinds of interesting things tend to occur. A lot of so-called UFO abductions tend to appear. A lot of people tend to report plenty religious occurrences in their life. Even if you take a look at the Bible, whether some religious people like it or not, there are lots of so-called miracles that happen right before the character from a story fell asleep or after he or she woke up. So that's a purely interesting and magical condition. So it was not your case, right? You were wow.
I was as conscious gets. I mean, I had the wherewithal to know that the dog might be stuck on a buried, my grandkids come over and they leave toys everywhere. And of course, some of them get frozen in the snow, right? And so every now and then the dog gets her collar because she'll be eating snow or doing whatever, and she'll get her collar stuck on one of these toys. And so I'll have to go out and unhook her. This was a normal occurrence for me, which is why I didn't even think of it. But
did he tell you anything precisely?
Did Odin?
Yeah.
Odin, yeah. We had a conversation. It's in the book, but ultimately it was to accept my birthright. Right.
Nice. Wow. Man, it's not every day that you run into Odin, huh?
No.
That's interesting.
No, it's not.
That's interesting.
I will
Do you think he'll come back to you one day?
I hope so.
Yeah.
I really hope so.
Wow, that would be nice.
I would.
That's a crazy, interesting story.
I would be very honored. I would be very proud if Odin were to revisit me. I would be happy and proud if Freyja. I mean, if any of the deities whom I recognize were to come to me and tell me, that they're happy with what I've been doing and they're proud of the message. I mean, that would be, to me, that would be the ultimate.
When you read a book or when you watch a film, right? When you're into some kind of a piece of literature or a particularly nice piece of cinematography, and you look at all this, maybe fairy tales, maybe fictions, and you stop and think for a second, that cannot have been based on nothing. It must have been based on something. 1,000,000,000%, people could not have come up with this kind of thing out of thin air. Right. And then if you allow yourself to be irrational sometimes with certain people for just a second, and you accept the whole sheer probability of all of those things being real, wow, that blows your mind away, And then what if it all is real, like just as they say, just as they say. Well, dang, that is interesting. I am endlessly grateful that you've spared your time. I will be sure to release this episode as soon as possible. I'll send you the link on Facebook. I will do a bit of digging. You can provide me any necessary links you wish me to include in the video's description via Facebook, and I'll be more than happy to paste it. Sadly, as I keep repeating to lots of my guests appear to be of a bigger reach than I deserve, and I wish I could do a better job promoting your book and yourself and your service. But maybe one day, maybe one day I'll be useful.
Maybe. But remember,
so thank you very much. And
remember, Rome wasn't built in a day, and it takes us small steps to get from where we are today to where we want to be. And so every small step counts. So
I'm proud of what I'm doing. I truly believe I'm on the right path. Yeah,
you are. I believe that just speaking with you.